Welcome to the October 28th, 2019 meeting of the Grafton Planning Board. Our first item on the agenda, as always, is public input. If anyone has something to talk about that's not on the agenda already, this is your chance. Not seeing anyone, we'll move on to endorsement of layout plan for DeRozier's Landing.
So I'm just going to keep it rolled up so that at the end of the meeting we can sign it. As everyone who was at town meeting is aware, town meeting did vote to accept as a town way DeRozier's Landing, the Dendy Acres and associated easements. So one of the things we just need to do is have the board sign, the select board, almost forgetting our own bylaw at town meeting. Select board has already signed it, so we just need to endorse it so that the developer can record the final documentation.
The name of the board hasn't changed officially yet. Have to wait for the legislature, I think.
Well, our bylaw hasn't recognized.
Yes, bylaw can be wrong. But, alrighty. So here we go.
Just dive right in.
Here we go. The next item is approval not required plan ANR 2019-9, 31 and 39 George Hill Road. William Berardi, applicant owner. Now this is a little interesting. We have a particular situation here. This property comes, the far corner of the plan we're looking at comes close to to our property, which raises a ethics question. I've spent about 2 days chasing this look, because this is a really small one. It's not like big issues, but we have a problem. If Linda and I were to recuse ourselves, then we'd only have 2 members who could vote.
Correct.
That's not a quorum, and that's not sufficient to approve the plan. In many cases, in a situation like this, you can wait until the missing person, Dave in this case, is back. In this case, though, A&Rs have a 21-day
Correct.
timeline, which started
Last Thursday.
So Dave will not be back in time to step in. So that raises this thing called
Rule of necessity.
the rule of necessity. There's a rule of necessity which took me 6 tries to explain to the Attorney General's ethics line this afternoon why the current version of their guidelines say we can do this. I have to declare that, let's see.
You first.
Taking into account the facts that I have disclosed, I feel that I can perform my official duties objectively and fairly.
Can I have that too?
You know, if you can read it. The printer wasn't too good.
Sorry. Okay. I have to say exactly the same thing, that taking, oh gosh.
It's on the right-hand side, where the X is.
Oh, yes. Taking into account the facts that I have disclosed above, I feel that I can perform my official duties effectively and fairly. We did sign papers and turn them in to the town clerk, and we've kind of gone through those. Neither of us see a problem.
Yeah.
It's just that we have to do that.
So now we've satisfied the requirements. Someone who is not in this situation on the board needs to invoke the rule of necessity, and I hand it to the clerk.
Yes, I move that the planning board invoke the rule of necessity due to the quorum issues with this.
I think you declare
Adar.
it. I think you declare it. Okay? So, now we have an A&R plan to look at.
If you want to pass those, if you want to take a look, I have it on the screen. So it is the topic of the A&R, pretty straightforward. I'm just, before getting into it, just going to ask if there is anyone from land planning or 3139 George Hill Road here. No? Okay. It's pretty straightforward. When you look at GIS, this lot 2 that has this dashed line, that is the existing configuration. What they're doing is abandoning that lot line and then having a new line. So this is the line that they're abandoning, and they're setting this new line here, creating lot 2 and the remaining lot here. And you're on George Hill. It's a public road. The property is accessible through the public road, and of course meets all the requirements of an A&R. So staff, whoops, no, cancel. Staff recommends the endorsement of this. And it does have required frontage and all of that.
Frontages have not changed.
No,
From-
actually
from
frontage
prior.
has not changed from the prior
Prior
plan.
It's just basically giving some more acreage to lot 2.
Yeah.
31 George Hill.
Chase is the one who does that.
Anybody have any discussion? Did you get to see it?
Yep.
No discussion? Is there a motion?
Yes. I move that we accept this plan as proven not required.
Yeah, we find that approval is not required, and we authorize this planner to
Yes.
sign.
Authorize the planner to sign, yes.
We'll write a script.
That would help me.
Help me too. Did someone second the motion?
He-
Yes, we had a second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted unanimously. Pass back the plan. All right. Oh, is anyone here for the last item on the agenda, the subdivision off North Street? Okay. In case you are not aware, late this afternoon, we received a request to grant a continuance, which we'll be taking up maybe at 7:30.
Right.
So we won't be, presumably, the board will grant the request, and we will not be taking any testimony tonight. It's going to be a while, so maybe it saves someone sitting around. That said, draft decision, 44 Estabrook Avenue, SP 2018-8.1/SPA.
Just bringing this up on the computer. So, as you may recall, associated with Estabrook as well as with BWC Lake Ripple and Knowlton Farms, we had two applications for the exact same time, or that came in at the same time. One was for straight a 1-year extension, and the second was for a 1-year extension and modifications of the site to include concrete pad to accommodate battery storage, adding gravel drive, and proposed animal shelter and fenced-in paddock. So it's that application that we're dealing with first in reviewing the draft decision for 44 Estabrook Ave.
Is this a straight majority?
No, it's special permit, so it would be 4 out of 5. 4.
Shouldn't,
Someone should.
Yes.
Yes.
You're eligible, you've been through,
We only had one hearing, and
I was there.
Yep.
Yeah.
okay, then I'm appointing you to act on this.
Sure.
So I'll of course add reference within this decision to appointing Vikram to participate.
yeah, and you'll have to change that on the
Yes.
ayes, nays.
Yep.
I looked through it and didn't find any problems, but
Yeah, I didn't notice any either.
well, I move we vote to approve the draft decision.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Opposed? So voted unanimously. That brings us to the draft decision for 43 Estabrook Avenue, SB 2018-19.1 SPA and site plan approval. The other one was site plan, well, the number tells us, the letter tells us that. Pretty much the same story.
For this one, it was only, I mean, it's the same thing as far as board will have to appoint Vikram to participate on it. This
So-
one was only, this one only was for extension of time. There was no other changes to the site.
Making the appointment. Any discussion, questions, corrections, motions?
I move that we vote to accept the draft decision of the SP 2018-9.1/SPA.
Second.
Moved and seconded, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Unanimously. Now,
Bills are
we don't have any discussion items?
No, unless you want to discuss them. No.
In that case, bills have circulated.
Yes.
Minutes of previous meetings. I have here June 24th. Any comments or corrections or any of that? Any motions?
So the only thing I had, and it's really just for consistency's sake, is the first portion for reorganization has reference to chairman, but we've always referenced chair, so we just have to make that change within action item 2 for consistency's sake.
Is there a motion perhaps with that edit?
I move that we accept these minutes as written with the modification Joe just mentioned and any further modifications to be discussed during discussion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So voted unanimously. Staff report.
Okay. So, this was, or last week was a pretty interesting week as far as for activities in the department. First, over the summer, I had let the board know that Town of Grafton was successful in receiving technical assistance grant from Mass Development to help undergo a planning study for what will become the former DPW site on Upton Street. On Friday, I, as well as Tim McNerney and John Allen, Economic Development, met with someone from Mass Development as well as their consulting engineer, and discussed the scope of the project, which is basically to, just like we did for North Grafton Transit Village as well as for Worcester Street, to undergo a public planning process to engage the community to identify what should happen with that property. As we know from some of the comments that have started on social media, there is a broad range, and that's the intent of the project, is really to try to identify what residents would like to see become of that property, because it is the eastern gateway into the common, not only a DPW site, but then also that wraps around to the White Barn that's next to the railroad tracks, but then really an opportunity to sort of re-envision including some private properties such as Cumberland Farms, the White multifamily house, as well as the post office. See how we can sort of pull things in together, especially given that the library is really starting to come down and extend into Upton Street. So a real opportunity to engage the community. So that sort of scope and kickoff, really more on the administrative side, happened on Friday, and we're going to be developing a timeline for engaging public and planning board as far as facilitating that community discussion with that project. The other thing is that for the last couple of months, our office has been working to highlight the advantages of developing in Grafton, and in conjunction with Tufts Veterinary School, as well as Blackstone Valley Chamber of Commerce, Worcester Area Chamber of Commerce. We held a Grow Your Business in Grafton public forum at Tufts Veterinary Campus. We had various representatives from different commercial realtors, developers, consultants attend. We had a speaker from Mass Office of Business Development, myself talking about opportunities within Grafton, as well as someone from Tufts talking about Grafton Science Park and the way that Tufts Veterinary School is able to support businesses in Grafton Science Park. And we also had someone talk about just tax increment financing and what that means and how that can leverage additional incentives for town to utilize that as a tool to attract business. Presentation, they were really well received. I've had about 5 different inquiries that came after that as far as various properties. And we're really excited to have that dialogue with people looking at some of the opportunities we have. For anyone or for the board and anyone in the public or watching, some of these properties that we highlighted are the same ones that we have outside the planning office. Some of the boards that we had done through staff highlighting characteristics of the property, but also what can happen and contact information. So it was a good opportunity for us to highlight Grafton and try to promote some of the things that, quite honestly, we really should be patting ourselves on the back. I mean, the board as well as the department, because we have taken over the last 3 years a lot of steps to try to revisit zoning, to plan for the future, and to try to diversify the town. Along those lines, I'm wrapping up the final version of the request for proposals for the 8 Pine Street. This is the 8.8 acres that we zoned North Grafton Transit Village Overlay District. The intent is within a couple weeks to put that out on the street so we can solicit input and feedback from developers, or not feedback, sorry, elicit responses to the RFP to try to sell that property. The North Grafton Transit Village Overlay District is 40R, so smart growth, and the real goal is to develop that as a transit-oriented development with multi-housing, maybe multi-family housing, maybe some retail, maybe some communal space directly opposite the train station. It's a really great opportunity to provide affordable housing, but have it in a way that really minimizes the impacts, i.e. someone could walk to the train, don't necessarily have to impact some of the main commercial areas in town, and it's easy access out to Route 20, Route 9, 495 corridor. So that's something that I'm finalizing within this week to then make sure that the state DCAM as well as Mass Historic can review before we put it out on the street. Nothing that basically finished and got out on the street is a request for proposals for updating the town's community preservation plan, working with the CPC, put together a request for proposal for them to select a consultant to help update their plan. Their plan was last updated in 2006. So this is going to be a good effort to try to help them to, again, engage the community, engage other boards to identify what the CPC should be identifying for spending money and basically programming out for the next couple of years. So that'll be something that deadline for responses is essentially coming up towards the end of November, the week before Thanksgiving, so that then CPC can review and hopefully get someone on board first or second week of December to really kick off 2020 with that process. Another sort of plan that working on, I've been helping the Grafton Historical Commission. They, in reviewing responses to an RFP for a consultant to help do historic property inventories, they reviewed the responses that came in and provided me with their choice for the consultant. So I'm finalizing that administrative work with Mass Historic so that we can finalize a contract with the consultant and get them doing an update. That update for historic properties was, the last update was done almost 30 years ago. So there's a lot of properties, yeah. There's a lot
Stuff that was built since then is historic now.
essentially, the new homes are now historic, so it's been pretty busy as far as sort of laying the groundwork for what activities will be occurring in 2020. So it's not just the election national election we get to look forward to. It's also all these planning projects. Last thing, at least our office is formally going to have a new addition on Wednesday, administrative position that supports conservation, but also will support some of the work that I do with affordable housing. They'll be starting, so at least we're getting that body count back up in the department to take some pressure off some of the administrative tasks that the conservation agent / planner is currently doing, and to support other activities within the office.
A question.
Yeah.
Okay. So, talking to a bunch of friends and people in Grafton, the general theme seems to be that it is a little difficult to do business with Grafton. I get this consistently, and that's one of the reasons why I'm sitting here. To mitigate that, would you be the single point shop where we can have any of these folks come and talk to you, and you can elaborate what's the process and stuff?
Correct.
Or would they not multiple talks?
So I've been working pretty hard over the last 5 years to try to address that. Mm-hmm. And one of the things is that sometimes it feels that it is a perception that just can't get out of the way, that it's just people hear it, they haven't necessarily experienced it, but they've heard it and it perpetuates itself. Some of the things that we've done, not only bringing John Allen on board to do direct reach out to the business community and to help with process, and to also be someone that can be viewed by the business community as not necessarily in the permitting side of it, but more aligned with them to try to at least iron out some of the issues that maybe people have, and to have a better understanding, and to basically try to smooth over any of those feelings. But also through development team every Thursday, we're basically meeting there for people who are looking at starting up businesses or even building a house, to come in and just to talk about the process. What doesn't get talked about is, and they will be eventually a application that comes in front of the planning board. We have a company that is relocating out of Framingham. They found this spot in Grafton they really like. And they were looking at a bunch of towns, a bunch of the surrounding towns. And basically feedback they gave to myself as well as the town administrator's office is that Grafton was the easiest to work with. We were accessible. We helped them, and they're going to be bringing this Land Rover reconditioning business to Grafton, sort of a very niche, automotive repair business, mainly because of the fact that, one, the property worked, but that we were welcoming and we identified a clear path. That's what we try to do. Sometimes it is hard to get out of a shadow that maybe was many years in forming. And at the same time, if people are still experiencing that, that's when I'd recommend either talking to myself or John Allen to sort of talk about what are some of those things. Sometimes it can be not understanding the process of the bylaws, or that the process seems very bureaucratic and impersonal. But I'd like to think that in planning and economic development that we are able to personalize it a little bit more and provide guidance and feedback. And the board, also, I know we look scary up here. You're in front of nameplates, so you got to be scary when you have nameplates. But part of it is just setting expectations, and so that people aren't fumbling and then experiencing things negatively, and that coloring someone's experience. So if you do have people that that are like, no, it's because of this reason, that's why I experienced it, I'd love to talk to them, or have John Allen reach out to them to talk about that.
Of course, I've been around quite a while, and I've been hearing this perpetually.
I know.
And I'm not at all sure that other towns might not occasionally have the same complaint. Some of it is that it's just, there is a lot you have to do, all these laws and all these procedures. So you have to do those things, and the average person doesn't have a clue about it. But part of it is, you don't see why you can't get your building permit for something or other. Simply just, and the fact is that there are rules.
Yep.
And Grafton enforces its building rules, and all the others. So no, I've seen it get a whole lot better. The development meetings, they ought to be more visible to a broader range, and maybe being able to find ways to tell the story like just now. That's it. Anybody else on that? I have just a moment. Maybe we can squeeze in correspondence.
Sure.
I did have a question on the first item on the file, which is a letter from Harmon Law Offices about a foreclosure sale on 20 Creeper Hill Road. I think that's the property that we've been around and around about they need to clear whatever it is, chapter whatever.
Yeah, so this was something that was in chapter 61A, was actually on town meeting floor, lost by 1 or 2 votes for us requiring it. Clearly, October 15th has come and passed. I have not heard that the foreclosure sale even happened at that point. So I don't know the status of that. And thank you for pointing this out. I do want to follow up.
Have we ever, has the town ever gotten the necessary information in order to be, I don't remember that we got the information you're supposed to get.
There was an issue where we were contesting the whether or not the PNS was actually detailed enough that it was something to be considered, i.e., that there was some contingencies in it that really impacted whether or not it was a executable PNS. None of that was ever resolved, and
So isn't the 61A claim still outstanding?
this was discussed basically coming up a year ago, and maybe it was just the planning board may not have been aware, or at least maybe just I'm not remembering if we discussed it. So 20 Creeper Hill being an old orchard, having some questionable issues as far as access from across the street. But the housing trust had talked about this at length with town council last summer, and one of the things as far as if we purchase it, what would we use it for? One of the ideas was affordable housing. However, without any ability to go on, test the soils, do some appropriate examination, the trust basically said, we have other opportunities we'd rather concentrate on than doing something like that.
It still doesn't, before any of us should be able to give input on the question, we should have a valid cost. And I don't think we ever got a valid cost.
Yeah, because it was based on a 7-lot A&R plan that they said was an A&R plan that no way could be an A&R plan. So it also required, because of then some of these other issues, I believe it was recommended by town council to the board of selectmen just not to pursue it. It's still in 61A, and then whoever gets it, we're going to have to deal with them at that point.
Okay, that'll be another interesting time
Yep.
to live in. Okay,
Bob, before you go much further, I think some people have arrived for me.
I'm about to do that. I'm on this. Any more, since the last time I asked, is anyone else here for the new subdivision proposal off of North Street? Okay. I announced this earlier, but so that you don't sit around for too long. We'll take that up now. We received a request from the applicant
Correct.
to continue this to a future meeting
Our-
this afternoon.
Yeah, to our next meeting on Monday, November 4th, next week.
What does our agenda look like on November 4th?
The agenda, actually, I'm sorry, but it isn't that bad. We only have one public hearing.
I thought there was an interesting,
It may be interesting, but it doesn't mean that there's.
does it involve marijuana?
Yes, it does.
Ah. So, we should pack a lunch to keep us going.
Yeah, packed breakfast.
Breakfast. Okay, so, we have a request to continue until the next meeting.
Correct.
What is the wish of the board? Grant the request?
I think we should probably, like, my feeling is grant it, and if we're granting it, we might as well wait to read the public notice until next week, so that we make sure we don't have any
I don't, it doesn't make too much difference. We've certainly not taken any testimony.
Correct.
Right.
But I don't know whether we can act on it when it's not open, so.
Correct. So, because we have to continue to a time and place certain, recommend that the board, if you're going to accept the request for continuance, accept the request for continuance to Monday, November 4th at, they in their notice say 7 o'clock. I would be putting it on at 7:30.
And without opening the hearing first.
Correct.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So voted. So, sometime 7:30 or later, a week from tonight. That brings us to 6A. Request for special permit SP 2019-13/SPA and site plan approval at 98 Worcester Street, the Grafton Water District. Come on down.
Ready for us already?
That's what I
Do you want to request a continuance and we can pick it up after a fun meeting next week?
I'm not worried about the name plaques. I'm a little more worried about everybody sniffling up there.
Sorry.
And our project has nothing to do with marijuana. So I'm Matt Pearson from the Grafton Water District. Got several people here from Ty and Bond in case there's some real technical questions. We're here tonight to bring forth a project at our Worcester Street Pump Station, which is located behind Stop and Shop Plaza. The building there was built in the early 70s. It's one of our main sources of water for the town. It's got old, needs to be replaced, and before I move on from this wonderful job, been here 30 years as of last month, and I'm trying to get some of these projects complete before I move on and leave it a little easier for the person that follows. Been before the board, well, Bob and I are probably the only ones here that have been here that long, and always had a great relationship. We're going to demolish the existing building and the area around it, including the blacktop and the fence. We're going to leave the well in its location, but it will be replaced with what they call a pitless adapter, which means it's just basically the pump and everything is under the ground with just a little wellhead. There won't be a building. There'll be a small chain link fence around it. The new building will be about 130 feet west of that towards Stop and Shop. Our idea is twofold. We can move everything away from the wetlands in Axtell Brook. And the other thing is we can construct the whole building, all the appurtenances of the piping, the plumbing, electrical, and then in a short time transfer and demolish the building and get it back. So we have a very short window of downtime. We do need all our wells pretty much during the year. Hopefully we'd like to start construction early spring to have this transfer and the building and everything done by next fall or winter and make the transfer when we're obviously not using a lot of water, which is during the winter time. It's probably, the project will probably take at least a year to do. We've been before conservation. We've been before them. We have an order of conditions. We also been through with stormwater just recently. That was approved and recorded. We've answered all the questions from the engineering, Graves. Everything that I know of, and talking and working with Joe, should be all set from anybody that's needed input or has input on the project. And I will just leave myself at that. If there's any real technical questions that I can't answer, I'll turn it over to one of the representatives from Ty and Bond. So.
Any questions up here?
Sure. Is this, how's the funding or the budget for this? Given
Well,
the fact that we are in deficit.
the Grafton Water District is a separate municipality within the town of Grafton. In 1988, the town formed the Grafton Water District to take by eminent domain. They negotiated originally, but they wound up taking by eminent domain a private water company that had owned the facility and basically it let it get in disrepair. The town did a very good job of doing that, and I think that was the best interest of the town. As we can see, we have plenty of water, good water, and we've had the facilities to promote growth in the town. So it is a public municipality, so the funding sources that we have is basically, we've been saving cash, and we won't have to borrow money against it. It's not gonna affect the water rates or anything like that. Haven't heard that before, have you?
They're too good.
So, I mean, that's where the important thing is that essentially within the borders of Grafton, we have two water districts, South Grafton Water District and then Grafton Water District. Both are separate from town government, while we have a sewer department that does fall under the town. Grafton Water is separate jurisdiction.
We still have a board of water commissioners, which are elected by any person that's within our district. They don't have to be a taker or a customer. So if you live on George Hill Road, for instance, you are in the district, and as long as you're a voting voter for the town of Grafton, you can vote in our election or at our annual meeting, which we have just similar to the town. So this project was budgeted several years ago, I believe now, and we've been working through the process slowly, because I realize that's what it takes. Never put anything in a rush, but we get to the end point, and so we're looking to get to very shortly, so.
So it doesn't affect anything to do with our town budget?
No, because
That's
it's
a-
not even part of the town.
Our revenue is derived from connection fees from new users that connect to our system or our water rate. We don't tax. We have the ability to tax, but we have not done that except our original taking when we taxed everybody about $50 to get a little pool of money going.
Whether they were customers or not.
I believe so. That was a very,
People that lived on George Hill Road, for example. had-
Yeah.
Who will
yeah.
never have water.
A lot of people said that, but they haven't now.
So we're sort of in a interesting position that really most of the heavy lifting was undertaken by conservation. They fall within the riverfront, wetlands, and then also stormwater came in place. So as the board knows, we had two previous requests for continuances. Some were requested so that they could address not only consultant comments coming from Graves Engineering, our consultant, but then also Graves Engineering, and who was reviewing for conservation, and then also their natural science consultant. So, as Matt said, we're actually in a situation whereas exhibits, you have the final stormwater permit as well as the order of conditions. As we may recall from other projects where the board has granted waivers from complying with our stormwater bylaw, the Conservation Commission stormwater bylaw actually is more conservative, meaning that for calculation perspective for storms, it imagines more rainfall, so it has to accommodate a larger storm than our regs. So essentially, compared to our regs, you're overbuilding things. But for conservation, it's not. This is one of the things that I'm working with Graves and Conservation to try to rectify our regulations. Since we should have had snow by now already, and now we're just getting more rain, all this stuff that's going on.
We get the 100-year storm every year or two.
Exactly. So from staff's perspective, they've already addressed all the comments from Graves, and it ends up being essentially the one waiver is from our subdivision rules and regs, because that's what site plan calls for, is a waiver from adhering to those, because again, the Cornell method, which conservation uses, is more conservative, generates more, relies on generation of more rainfall. So while it is not while it is a waiver, it's not really a substantial one. It's not something that relaxes it. Actually, it's more stringent. He'd rather go with ours than conservation.
Yeah. If requirements under our rule are within the requirements of the Concoms, why is a waiver required?
that's a good point. It's just that we've sort of always administratively handled it that way. That it's just they're not using the methodology in the subdivisional regs, and they're following conservations. And while there is, while these are more stringent, conservative, i.e., relying on more runoff, it is a deviation. So therefore, that's why the waiver is encouraged and requested.
Because couldn't you just analyze it both ways?
We could technically modify our subdivision rules and regs and say, if you're not triggering stormwater, here's what you follow, and if you're triggering stormwater, then do that. We could technically do that.
Whatever, okay.
But then we'd have to hold the public hearing to modify our subdivision rules and regs.
But we have so many modifications we've said we're gonna make over the last 10 or 20 years that maybe we should do that one.
Maybe one of these days we should.
Maybe we'll have a special meeting to do that.
There you go.
There you go. Anybody else up here?
Yeah, my biggest concerns with this project from looking at the plans was essentially falls more into Concom's jurisdiction anyway, as far as, you know, all the wetlands and stuff. So the fact that they've already basically approved what we're seeing today, that's the biggest bonus for me.
Yeah, that was our biggest hurdle. Yeah, it's just, and, you know, I mean, you gotta understand, we pump 800 gallons a minute out of this source, so, you know, you look at stormwater and you go, from a perspective of a Stop and Shop plaza, you want infiltration. Well, you know, we're pumping 800 gallons a minute out, almost 1 million gallons a day. The site is an old gravel pit. You know, it was reconstructed by the water company before us in the 70s, and we're rebuilding that building, and we're doing our due diligence to make it even better by moving it away and landscaping what we have disturbed, and provide water for the town for the future. So
Seem to remember that the Stop and Shop Plaza does have provision for infiltration too.
Yep,
Seems
under the
like
parking lot.
A lot of the parking lot has underneath the
Yep.
rainwater is.
well, you and I, Bob, could say the old Stewart's Plaza.
Bowling alley.
Bowling
Anybody else, anything more up here? Anything out there? Anybody have any comment? I have a random question that isn't really this, but you mentioned the rates. Somewhere, just in the last week, I've seen someone who opined on social media that one of the reasons that a particular development possibility up in North Grafton, chemical, pharmaceutical, something or other company, one of the reasons they didn't come here was because, I think it was because of the water rates. Do we have water rates that are out of line for
Well-
what they find elsewhere?
That's a long discussion. Let's have
Okay.
breakfast. No. Short story is, a lot of towns don't have enterprise funds, so their water rates are also, to run a water system is also, what's the word I'm looking for, helped by the tax base. The water district, the only revenue we derive to make sure that water comes out of your faucet is through the rates. This project here is, you know, $1.5 million to $2 million. We just built a well on Trinity Ave. That was $2.5 million. A new storage tank is $1.5 million. As we all know, because the town's going through the schools, the fire station, the police station, nothing's cheap anymore. You know, and people will go to Dunkin' Donuts and buy a cup of coffee that's that tall, and I want to tell you, 99% of that is my water. Okay, they paid about a thousandth of a cent for that cup, and they sold it for what? I don't drink coffee, you know, $3 to $6.
$2.38
How
for
much
a
a
medium.
shot you have in it, you know? They complain, but when they use it in their processing, they're happy they can finally get it. Because a lot of towns cannot supply what we have here, and we have a good supply of water. We'll get the right commercial base eventually.
One other thing, since you're here.
No problem.
Oh, wait. Has the water district gotten any more receptive to the idea of allowing cell towers, or cell antennas on their tanks?
Even DEP is more discouraging that. One of the biggest hurdles is if you have a steel tank, is when you come back to paint the tank. And that's been a huge dilemma for a lot of these towns that jumped on it right away, got the revenue, and now you got all this CRAP stuff all over your tank, and it's very hard at that point to do what you're supposed to do, is supply storage in a tank. And you're talking millions of dollars to paint a tank and have the stuff removed, put back. A lot of the original contracts didn't have provisions for the utility to remove, meaning us to remove that. So now we have to pay to remove it, set up a temporary site for the cell tower stuff, paint the tank, and pay to put it back on. Lessons learned.
Yeah, well,
I don't think
so-
the district would be a standalone tower in an area we probably wouldn't be hesitant about. But having something attached to the tank for security purposes as well as future maintenance. Who's climbing your tank?
Which-
You know what I mean? Who's on your tank? Guy's got a key to the gate, he's in there,
The thing is that over the years, we've had a number of situations where the water district's tanks would be the best, would be a very good solution rather than other antennas being built. And at least it sounds like some progress has been made in figuring out what you gotta ask for from the providers.
Our Brigham Hill tank has a deed restriction on it. We can't put anything there except,
That was that came up just after I joined the board.
Yeah.
I remember before we actually put the bylaw in for cell towers.
and we tried to put one on this site, on the Worcester Street.
Oh, that's a, no, but
That's
that was a
when, that's when
tower.
it first, a cell tower, that's when it first came,
That wasn't a
and that's when we said,
monopole.
no, we're not going down that road again.
That wasn't a monopole. That
Right.
was a
Right.
Eiffel Tower.
Yeah, that's when they
And,
first came out.
well,
Yep.
another time, maybe, but that didn't work then.
Get the next guy.
Well, but like, the hill near the center would be a good location.
Yep. Pigeon Hill.
Because there aren't a lot of locations that can see in all directions. Okay, but enough of that. Anything else? Anybody out there? Anybody in here? Anything else we need? There's seeming to be nothing. Do I need a motion?
I move that we close the public hearing
And
and direct staff to draft a decision.
is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted.
Thank you. Been a pleasure.
One question? That's a special permit?
Yeah?
Yeah, that's what I was.
We have to wait for, Mullen. If Dave Mullins,
Because the decision will not, I'm sorry, I'm really apologizing for this. I won't be able to get this done for next Monday.
No, that's fine.
The
That's
next
fine.
time would be then November 28th, and then at that point, either we appoint Vikram or Dave Mullins, and then we'll be.
Okay, just so we
Yep.
have that straight.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
okay. That brings us to, 6B, request for special permit SP 2019-115/SPA and site plan approval at 11 Spanish River Road for a, accessory apartment.
All right, while they get this set up, I'll read the public hearing notice.
Go for it.
Forgive my tone of my voice. Pursuant to sections 1.5.7 and 1.3.3 of the Town of Grafton zoning bylaws, the planning board will hold a public hearing on Monday, October 28th, 2019, commencing at 7:30 p.m. in Conference Room A at the Grafton Memorial Municipal Center, 30 Providence Road, to consider the application for a special permit request for an accessory apartment at the property located at 11 Spanish River Road, shown as Grafton Assessor's Map 98, Lot 89. Said property is located in the low-density residential R20 zoning district. The applicant owner is Sean L. Larkin. Copies of the plan are available for public inspection at the planning department Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. or on the Town of Grafton website at www.grafton-ma.gov on the Planning Department Development Projects webpage.
Anything to start?
Say, let them dive right in.
Evening. So we are looking to add an accessory apartment.
You should say who you are.
I'm sorry. I'm Sean Larkin. This is my wife, Effie Larkin. We are looking to add an accessory apartment in the basement of 11 Spanish River Road for my wife's parents who are currently living with us. It will consist of a bathroom, bedroom, kitchen, and living room space. The bathroom is currently rough plumbed, so the pipes do exist there. I believe we have most of the structural things in place. Everything will be internal. We're not planning to make any changes to the exterior of the house. I'm open to answer any questions that you have.
I'm just bringing up the property on. Just Google Maps.
Maybe some people who can't remember where Spanish River Road is.
It's on the corner of Power Line.
Oh.
It intersects Power Line and Trinity.
Frank Knowles Development, right? The new part of the old part.
We moved actually from Frank Knowles Development, I think.
So, this is the house, and as was stated, they're not proposing any additions to the structure. It'd be all interior. We have had a discussion with the building department. There are some code compliant things that they just need to satisfy when they submit to the building department. But from perspective from zoning, it is wholly within the structure, so we don't have to worry about that. And also had shared with them past decisions so that they're aware as far as the board's decision and having it be a in-law apartment.
That doesn't run with the land, it runs with you. In other words, when you leave, someone else would have to get a permit.
Yes.
That is correct.
So it's restricted to whatever we say, family members.
We don't plan to leave until we move in with our kids.
Right, but we do the,
No, of
we do this every time. It's been quite a while since anybody was surprised, maybe because Joe lets people know in a friendly way.
And a friendly
to
way.
helping the the development.
Yep.
Okay. You said what you want to say?
Yes, sir.
Questions?
How are you related to this?
That's my daughter.
Okay. She makes very
So,
good pizza.
so you're gonna have
Yes.
something,
Yes.
She knew you.
you're gonna have something with this, something to do with this?
This is my
No,
mom. They live in my house right
Yeah,
now.
we live with them because my husband is retired, so
So they lived in South Grafton in what's called the Village. And so they lived there and they sold their property. They moved into our other property. That wasn't enough room for everyone, so we sold that and bought this property.
Yeah. So anyway,
Yeah.
you're the
we're
player.
just doing a little space between the house to,
Okay,
you know,
okay.
And that's the kind lady from New Fancy House Pizza.
yeah.
Very good pizza.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. There you go. Plug for you. Very good pizza.
Good.
I like these drawings too.
Yeah. Yeah. Fancy. I don't know quite how they got done, but
Yeah,
I'm
I
happy.
was thinking that as well.
yeah. Three-dimensional rendering.
Yeah, they're really some of the nicest we've seen.
Yeah. Not stamped though.
That's for when they submit to building.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any public comment? Are there any more questions up here?
Nope.
Then is there a motion?
I move that, what do we do for this? We
We,
approve the.
we close the
the public
hearing
hearing.
and
Close
ask
the
for a
hearing and-
decision to be drafted.
And ask
Yep.
for a decision to be drafted.
Correct.
Second.
Moved and seconded, discussion, hearing none, all in favor,
Aye.
opposed, so voted. He'll draft a decision, we'll act on it as soon as he can get it done.
Only 8 o'clock. Something's wrong.
Well, I still have one, I think we're done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have one more item on the agenda, which is reports from planning board representatives, and representatives on town committees and CMRPC.
I want to ask a question. So I'm part of the CMRPC, but I never get an invite. I have nothing.
Well,
How should I get
I
it?
have-
Yeah, we forwarded off all the information, so they should have your contact. You're not getting like any sort of mass generated email.
I got one, and that's how I realized that I'm part of this, because I wanted to be part of this. I saw one, there is some training or some
Yeah,
orientation
yeah.
session. That's the only thing I saw.
there's a quarterly meeting coming up. We can do that offline, but you should be getting information. I know that I checked quite recently, and I believe that both of us are on the rolls up there. But the select boards, DBA select board, selectmen, haven't, their two people aren't on record up there yet. And I've sent more than one message about that.
Well, maybe once
Haven't
they're up
gotten
to-
very far with
Maybe
that.
once they're up to full strength after tomorrow's election.
I'm sure that'll make all the difference. Probably then they'll all be looking for that. Never mind. So, you should, I don't know, maybe email me and because I've got the addresses to.
But do they meet? Is it just a quarterly meeting, or is that?
The basic membership is a quarterly meeting and the annual dinner. Then there are committees and whatnot, and you can put your hand up to be on committees when the time comes. But you should, there's a fair amount of stuff that comes out that you get a chance to go to if you want,
Okay.
sessions about this and that. There's something coming up about solar. That there's some sort of a training or, a session. I think it's bigger than just CMRPC, for strategies or best practice for solar. I know that's coming. Yeah, email me, and I'll see what I can get. You're in the library
Yes.
building.
Groundbreaking
do-
is, I think, tomorrow.
I think it's next week.
Next week.
I think it's somewhere around Wednesday, I thought.
I thought.
There's an email.
Yeah.
Hmm?
I was gonna say, I thought I read November 9th, but that's not right.
No, I'm thinking
I don't.
6th or something like that.
6 sounds likely.
November 6th.
Next Wednesday, November 6th, at 10:30 in the morning is the library groundbreaking.
Yep.
Finally. But people, it came up earlier today, people who are used to parking there are probably not gonna have any more chance to park for the next couple of years. Pretty sure, because I'm sure the contractor's gonna take the whole
Do we,
space and close
does
it
that
up.
include the gravel lot
I
that's
think that's
crossing
what
with their
Yes.
funds?
referring to.
The building, part of the building is going on that
Yeah, that's
lot,
what I suspected. I just double
but
checking.
also staging area, equipment, office, everything. Probably spilling back towards,
There's supposed to be
where
Super
Super
Park
Park is
there.
supposed to go.
Nothing official yet.
Okay.
Hmm?
There's
Yeah.
supposed to be Super Park there. Super Park.
Super Park is, where you'll go in the driveway at the, whatever it is, east end, the new end. And you'll go past, and then back there, once that's done, they'll come back to looking at putting Super Park, that's where Super Park is.
They'll have to come back to planning
Okay.
Oh,
And
conservation.
and town meeting if they're gonna do CPC
yeah, they're gonna
funds.
have to find some money somewhere.
A lot of it.
We loved the earlier park. This is awesome. Were you there?
Which,
The earlier park which was there, Super Park, the original Super
oh,
Park next to the police
the
station.
old Super
The old
Park.
one.
Oh, yeah. I videotaped a segment on the day that the volunteers were there building it.
Oh,
It
really?
was done
Oh,
by
wow.
volunteers.
Yeah, that was done by volunteers.
That was awesome.
There was some, it was money donated. I don't think there was any appropriated to buy materials and a little bit of this and that. And then it was all done by volunteers.
Yeah.
In fact, Jim Gallagher interviewed our son on that video back in, I don't know, ought two,
Well, no.
1902.
86 or 87.
Yeah, somewhere around there. Okay, any other reports? Is there anything else that can legally come before the board?
I think
Motion
he's,
to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded, not debatable. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So voted.